Since we're already in the medical kind of questions, what does the Bible say about putting faith in doctors and not Christ? Should I refuse medical care? Is my illness just another test of faith and trusting that God will deliver me from this illness? If God can heal so many Christians who use that healing as their testimony, why can't God do the same for me? Or is that just stubbornness?
So just to be clear, you're saying this whoever may be asking.
Like for example, someone's diagnosed with cancer, they have the opportunity to do chemotherapy, and they're saying no because this is just another test from God. Like, what would that be? Like, would that be them just being stubborn because they have an obvious solution in front of them, or, yeah, like, what is just that? Is that stubbornness, or can that be? Is that fair?
I'm not a doctor, but I'll play one on TV. I'm just playing. I think it's I think it's negligent to. We know that God is even in the sciences, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, all truth is God's truth. Like literally, like 2 + 2 is 4. That's God's truth. So science and even the medical field, all the advances in medicine and technology and all that stuff, those things all belong to the Lord. I believe they're providential blessings upon our life. So I think to ignore what God has provided, right? In your life to actually find maybe a way to be healed, and then you don't take that route. It kind of goes like in the same way of like you have a broken arm, but you're gonna stay at home and say, well, this broken arm is gonna mend itself. When you could go to the doctor and get a cast and fix the arm. Cancer's just a bigger form of a broken arm down to the cellular level, right? So why reject providence in your life? Why reject what God has already provided around us in the form of technology? I'm not saying all these things are good. I understand that, like the problem we have right now with opioids and stuff like that people abuse it. But that doesn't mean, because you can use anything for evil in a sense, right? Anything access, everything is all things are lawful, but not all things are edifying to that purpose, saying that you could actually take advantage of what God has provided. So chemo, again, people have to pray about this and decide, like, if this is the route they want to take, they should. If there's a chance that you could, if there was a 1% chance that I could live by doing chemo, I would take the 1% out of 0. So it doesn't make sense for me to say, okay, well, God has provided this, so I'm not going to do it. Again, like the broken arm analogy kind of thing. Andrew?
Yeah, no, I think that's some good points. I think for me, I've always seen it as I think it's unwise to just leave it all to the Lord in the sense of just all you do is pray. And you sit around and wait for God to perform a miracle when God has provided means for us to get well. When I look at a doctor, a surgeon in his practice, when he's good and he's perfect at it, that is a picture of who God is in the sense that he's made in God's image, although whether he believes in God or not. I've always seen it as, well, God has provided these means for us, these technological advances for us to use. And so I think for the person who may have cancer, who may have whatever ailment, I think I would recommend this movie called The American Gospel, where maybe a few people will give a testimony, or it might just be one, where he may just leave the ball in God's court as far as his sickness, and he got so sick where he was basically sweating in his bathtub, and until he finally gave up and went to the doctor. And so I think I was trying to
dying, no?
No, it wasn't that guy.
Oh.
It was a missions guy who went to Belize or something. But whatever the case, I don't think that's a lack of faith. I believe God has provided those things for us to use. So I was trying to look for a passage in the Proverbs that I was thinking of, but I couldn't find it. But I mean, that's my answer.
I think I found Proverbs 27:12. There's I want to say there's like a precept there. It says the prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions, and the simpleton goes blindly and suffers the consequences. Kind of the same thing. It's like just it could be taken as you don't take care of yourself. We know that 1 Corinthians 6 says that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. So we have reason to take care of our body, right? Because he even calls in that same one, he goes that in that same passage, therefore it says, therefore honor God with our bodies, with your bodies. So to let it decay and die when you have an opportunity to live, I think is just not wise. It's like it said in Proverbs.
Mona, did you want to add something?
In my experience, I've had two cancerous situations in our family. One survived and one did not. My mother, who did not survive, was told by doctors that since they caught the cancer early, that after they removed the cancer part from her colon and her intestines, that after a series of treatment, that she should make a full recovery. So of course we went through with that, and she ended up dying short 2.5 years, a little less than 2 years later. My grandmother, on the other hand, had breast cancer, and she went through chemotherapy, and she survived, and she's living today, and she's 80 something years old. For me, because I have that high risk factor, I understand trusting in God, because I believe that God is a God of miracles, and I do believe that God is sovereign, and He has created these amazing advances in technology and medicine. And I mean, my daughter was born prematurely. Thank God for those advances in medicine. On the other hand, there are several factors that I consider. I saw the pain that my mother went through with the X amount of drugs that she had to take on top of the chemotherapy. I saw her waste away and pretty much decay. There were so many more problems with the medication that hurt her as opposed to helping her. So for me, I always think about, okay, it's important as making a decision like this to check your facts. And there was a couple of medications that my mom would take, and it would it would wipe her out. And I was like, man, why would they give that to her? And we went through a few things where I was like researching, and my husband's sister, like, she's really good at like reading articles and informing herself, so she would share with me, and I would be like, wow. Doctors get paid for prescribing any type of pharmaceutical, drug. Even with chemotherapy, there's CNN reports that say that about 48% of doctors get paid billions of dollars for writing those prescriptions. And my husband had mentioned the opioid, epidemic in our culture and society right now. So for me, I have thought about this. If I should get cancer, I've already expressed to my husband, I will take all those things into consideration, but I also do not believe that I would take that route of doing chemotherapy and radiation. I would do the surgeries. I think that, that's kind of simple, you cut out what is there, but I wouldn't expose myself or my children to the trauma of seeing their mother dying literally before their eyes. So I think that's for me as a believer, I understand that we are image bearers to Christ. I understand that, not being wise and using the counsel of those that are paid professionals. But I also think that God allows us the endowment to understand and have discernment and to educate yourself very well, so that if something like that is to happen to a believer, that they're not going into it blindly, putting their trust in the hands of a doctor alone. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
All right.
That's a long answer. Go ahead.
They got
We're
deep.
we just.
Love you, Mona. All right. Okay. So we got 2 more questions. So, I'm gonna let you pick. You want A or B?
D.
B?
C.
There's no C.
See, you don't see.
A or B?
Just go with B.
Doesn't matter.
B? Okay. Okay. If my church does not teach Calvinism, should I leave my church? What should I do?